Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
No, what?
All right, we are recording. We're live.
So, listen, I'm out of a cannon today. I'm out of a cannon, and I'll tell you why. Okay. I just got done. You know, you've heard of the James Webb Space Telescope?
I have heard of the James Webb
Mhm.
Space Telescope.
Very well said. So, I'm looking online. There's an image that came out a few days ago that showed galaxies that should not have formed when they did, according to the model that they have for the Big Bang and all that. Shouldn't have formed, and they're in great numbers. They're 10 times more than they thought there was going to be, and all this stuff, right?
Yep.
This is what pisses me off. Okay. Two physicists that that I follow on there get on and immediately, because there's articles come out talking about Big Bang's been debunked and all this stuff. Immediately come up, nope, Big Bang has not been debunked, and here's why. And it's all about the Big Bang is not about how the universe started, but rather about how it actually expands afterwards, and how it was, this soup of stuff, and then turned into the particles, then turned into, and all that stuff. And that specifically this other guy, but this Dr. Becky or whatever her name is as well. And the Big Bang does survive because the majority of the stuff that we see out there confirms our theory on all this. And so we see it with the CMB, the cosmic microwave background, and all this, they're going into all the weeds and everything about it, right? And saying all these articles about how it's been debunked, and, all the scientists are in a panic and everything. No, that's stupid. No, just for slight differences out there. And this was the words they used: small, slight, that sort of thing. Differences in the theory. Don't just get rid of it. That infuriated me because it sounds like a car salesman, a used car salesman trying to sell me a car, right? Well, just because it's got a slight difference in the mileage, just because it's got a V6 instead of an 8, and we told you it was going to be that, it doesn't mean that it's not the same car. We just need to change a few things. That's all. We just got to update the theory. No. If your theory said this, and this is not what it was, then the theory is wrong, and it needs to be replaced, possibly with something a little less full of hubris that scientists have had for so long. Maybe come out with a theory that says maybe this is how it started, with a question mark at the end.
Question mark,
theory. Yeah. That would be honest. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. And by the way, one of the guys, Arvin Ash or something like that, some Russian dude, I think, in a video, one of the guys who was saying, small differences, this is, nothing big, and all that. Galaxies, nothing big. 10 times as many as they thought, nothing big, right? A video he put out a few days ago was saying the exact opposite. I'm not kidding you, where he says, most scientists thought this. Apparently, it's not this by big margins, and we got to make big changes to our, how we thought about this and how the universe expanded and grew and all this stuff. Suddenly, between then and a couple days after, when people started sending him, messages, well, what does this mean? What's going on? You guys were all wrong and all this. Suddenly, it's no, everything's fine. The sky's not falling and all this. But you know who had it right? And if you don't follow him, if you don't listen to this person, Kelly especially, because I know you dig this stuff, you should. Sabine Hassenfelder. She's a German astrophysicist. No, she's a physicist, but she's into theoretical physics and experimental physics now. And I love her videos. She's the only one I've seen who's come out and says in her video, great video, you got to see it, where she goes and she says, we don't know, have no idea. And this just shows it. She says, why don't physicists then, she goes through the whole thing, why they don't know and how you can't know. It's impossible to know. And she says, and I give her full credit for this, why don't physicists come out and say, we don't know? She said, they hate the idea of having to say that. Can't stand, as simple as that. She said, what we ought to say, because she goes through all the different ones, the big bounce, the big bang, coming out of a 5-dimensional black hole, all these things, all these theories, string theory, all that are out there. And she says, we don't know. She even brings up, 6,000 years ago, God makes the earth and it forms with all the dinosaurs' bones exactly where they are because that's where he wanted them to be when he created the earth. And says, scientifically, that's a plausible theory. It doesn't follow the simplicity rule, but it's a possible theory. You know what else is? You could write a theory saying the universe came from broccoli. And she said, you come up with the initial state and the proper equations, you can actually have a theory that proves the universe was made from broccoli. All these theories can never prove themselves right or wrong with our methods, with what we know, with what we can know. She said, so here's what you need to know. We don't know. That's it. That's it. Why can't the others just simply say that?
Right, because if you go around saying we don't know or I don't know in a very, speaking for a specific person, you're probably not going to get published in prestigious scientific journals. You're probably not going to be asked to give the keynote speech at this conference or that conference.
Correct.
And you're not going to have the massive social media following that some of the, I'm going to call it like populist scientists have, Neil deGrasse Tyson and some of these other people who are, I'm not denigrating their scientific credentials, but
I actually like
they're a little bit
DeGrasse
more.
Tyson.
I know, but you know what I'm saying is he's a more populist kind of, and then there's the Asian guy, I forget his name, who's.
I know what you're talking about.
Right.
But see, here's the thing I love about DeGrasse Tyson and Sabina, and I think this actually helps them become more popular, is that they are one of the only two that come out and say, don't know. They do. I love Neil deGrasse's thing on gravity. It's one of the best answers I've ever seen on his own podcast. Somebody says, so what is gravity? What is that exactly? And he came out and we have no idea. That was his exact answer. Have no idea. Next question. And then he, laughs and says, no, seriously, we don't know what it is. We can measure it with it. We've got theories that work really well with how it's going to work and all this stuff. But as to what it is, we got no idea. None. That to me is so refreshing. That's why I love watching that guy. Love watching Sabine. She reminds me, by the way, of like Russell's mother, because she's very, very German, very, pragmatic. You know what I mean? But great sense of humor, German sense of humor, by the way. But that's why I love watching her. That's why they got such a great following, because they're so honest that way. I can't stand it when someone because you're right, Mark. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I've heard a number of scientists say that, where the research dollars, they're afraid those will dry up, the fame will dry up, all those things. Right. But the fact that all those mean something to them automatically destroys the scientific foundation they're supposed to be standing on.
And again, I think in the abstract, every scientist understands that, you come up with a theory and you test the theory. And when that theory is disproven, or new data comes along, this doesn't fit, right? We got to figure out what our hypothesis is, like what incorporates this new data or whatever. It's the same thing, hey man, the Earth used to be this, and then we discovered a whole new continent over here, and all the scientists, they were like, wow, we have to rethink some things, right? Because we literally discovered more of the Earth that we didn't know was there before. This is no different to me. We have better tools. We're discovering new things, and again, we're 2 weeks into it. Of course, the people who are vested in the status quo or vested in their prestige or their, whatever, like, oh, this is not a big deal. It kind of is. Give it a little while for everybody to. I know, but I'm saying is, initially, people always humans fight against change. This is no different on an individual level than it is on a scientific 100%. Level. The body of scientists
But this is
countries, whatever.
This is what I'm saying, is that it's always the field is always posited as being above. Well, we have to follow the scientific method.
True, but there's
Why aren't
humans
people
in the
listening?
field.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, is that they always say we have to listen to the scientists, we have to follow the scientific method, we have to go wherever the evidence leads us, and all this stuff. I think of it very Vulcan-esque, right? Like, we are above this. Trust us because we're above this. But you're not above it.
No.
That's the thing.
Right.
As soon as something like this comes out, you see who actually is and who isn't. And that's what I'm saying, is that it's infuriating that you sit there and say, well, no, you're not being honest. You're saying the theory of, but you're acting like it's fact. And it's not. It's not fact. The matter of fact, Sabina and Jordan Peterson have the same theory that we have. By the way, as a group, us. I love this, where Jordan Peterson's thing is every idea you've ever had is probably wrong. For everybody, everything you've ever thought of is probably wrong. And that if you go into it with that idea, you can test it. You want other people to play devil's advocate, to test it, to see, are there flaws? Will this fall apart? Do we need something different, right? Sabina says the same thing. Everything we have out there, Big Bang, Big Bounce, all that stuff, every one of them, probably wrong. We'll never be able to find out in that case, because we don't, limits of science and our ability to perceive and all of that. But everything we know, probably wrong. There's a humility with that. And there's a sincerity in trying to find the actual truth. The thing that I can't stand, because it comes across as so hypocritical. You are now coming across like the Kardashian of the, scientific world. I want the fame. I want the notoriety. I want the special documentary following me to the volcanoes of Iceland so I can talk about, the forming of and all this stuff, and sit here in a spa and, the hot springs and talk about all this cool stuff. And, 100 million years after the Big Bang, that's when this started forming and, all that stuff. Everybody wants to be the next Carl Sagan. And it comes across as very disingenuous and very superficial, which then brings all of that into a different light, a different questionable light, as opposed to being that honest, straightforward person. That's what I'm talking about. It's not the fact you have to revise things. That's the fun of it.
That's expected, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a scientist, that's how people know you're a good scientist, right?
Yeah,
It's like, I
exactly.
discovered something new and we had to change our understanding because of Einstein coming along and giving us these new theories that were like, hey, there's something there. You know what I mean?
And, even Einstein, you bring him up, absolutely, with Einstein. Even maybe he wasn't. Who knows? Because who knows who was right and who was wrong 50 or 100 years down the road, right? But there are definitely people who believe Einstein's theories, not of general relativity, but some of his other stuff about like quantum mechanics and all that, was wrong, because he didn't like a lot of that stuff, And so even he had possibly his own, faults and stuff that way, and had to admit, well, yeah, I was wrong about this, and, or it seems to be, or, that kind of stuff. A certain amount of humility, man, that would make them a cut above, not like your wizards or magicians of this special secret, mystical Harry Potter-esque kind of, field. It's not that. Stop trying to be the cool kid,
But I want to take this a little level deeper, if you don't mind.
How dare you?
Right. So it goes back to something
deeper.
It goes back to something Mark pointed out, which is the research dollars dry up, right? So where do a lot of these people go, and what's the money that goes into their pocket and fuels what they want to do? It's the research dollars. It's what's put into these things. And where does that come from? It
Big
comes from
science.
Right. It comes from people publishing papers and trying to get that stuff out there because people want to consume that. And so what happens is, what you want to fund and what people want to consume is the thing that gets created. And so the idea of science for science's sake, of saying, okay, look, here's this thing. I think it could be X, it could be Y, but I'm pretty sure it's X. That type of uncertainty is not the thing that sells papers and brings in research dollars. So what they want is they monetize the publication of research for prestigious organizations to put out there, so that, I mean, that it's the economics of the whole thing, right? Like you said, you're not really going to get a lot of funding if you stand out there and you say, I don't know. You're not going to get invited to be the keynote speaker if you're standing up there and saying, well, maybe kittens, right? So I mean, people want to consume certainty.
Wouldn't
That's
that
what
be an
people want.
amazing theory?
What,
But,
if it was
and again, from a
The
scientific
universe came
standpoint,
from a
yeah,
box of kittens.
box of kids. But from a scientific standpoint, I think we're talking about a couple of different things. There's like this theoretical astrophysics, which is one thing that if it's
Right.
theoretical, we can't really test it. We can't really know. We're looking through this new microscope and figuring, or telescope, and figuring new things out, and that's great. The other type of science is, I'm going to call it practical science. Hey, we're trying to figure out how to make better batteries. Hey, we're trying to figure out how to make superconductors at room temperature. Like, there's some very real science that's happening in labs that there is a commercial thing. Like, oh, if we can do X and we commercialize this, boom, you could build a whole new business out of this, or some company. So like that type of funding has dollars. Now, universities are doing it. In fact, I think most of it is done in universities, and then like people will come in and like snap it up and do stuff with it. So I don't know if they're necessarily like doing that type of research for the prestige or for the funding or for the what, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that kind of research is, there's always I think the profit motive kind of behind some of this research, but I don't think it's the one thing that drives it, because it's the universities that are like, we're working on batteries, or we're working on,
I think it's
biomedical stuff, these kind of, you know what I'm saying?
I do. I think it's actually, like I said, I think actually the chase is to be the next Einstein. Einstein was the first superhero scientist.
Well, he had some very breakthrough.
Well, he did.
Had never been done before, never contemplated. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We would love somebody to go, wait a second, let's take these 2 or 3 theories that we have that don't play well together and find the overall theory that does fit all of what we do know.
Right.
There's what we do know, what we don't know. And according to what Sean's saying, hey, we've just discovered some stuff that doesn't fit what we know. In fact, there's 10 times more of these galaxies than we thought there should have been based on our current theories. What do? Defend the current theories and downplay what we've discovered, or proceed accordingly?
When they
I think the problem here is
saying how big the difference was. Sorry,
well, the problem here is the timeline. If you're saying that the push is for the next Einstein, we have to understand the timelines of when there have been jumps in scientific understanding. The Ptolemaic theory on the formation of the solar system and how the planets work, that existed for thousands of years, right? And then you come along and somebody has a different theory, and we make a jump, or you have Johannes Kepler coming in with the laws of planetary motion, and we make a jump on how this works. Mark was right in saying that change is often resisted. Of course it is, because change is uncomfortable. It leads to uncertainty, and people don't like uncertainty, right? That creates risk, and your brain is designed to mitigate risk. So the more certain you are of things, the better you're going to be. But I think that if there's a push for Einstein, people are looking for the wrong push. I mean, how many Einsteins are there in history that come along? There aren't.
Well, there aren't.
So far,
my point is not that people are looking for it. My point is that the scientists who are out there are looking to become the next rock star scientist.
Yeah,
they haven't. I'm telling you, look at what it's become.
Right, but you don't become the next Einstein by defending theories that have been debunked on Facebook about 10 times the amount of...
What you end up doing, they want to be the next Einstein, then Carl Sagan, right? Then Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're looking to become that next social figure that everybody sees as science, the next Bill Nye the Science Guy, right?
The kind professor of thing. From Gilligan's Island.
Bill Nye's fine. What I'm saying is everybody's trying to chase what he's got.
That's right. Or the next Dolph Lundgren.
They want that.
Yeah. Who is more qualified to claim the title of scientist than Bill Nye the Science Guy?
I would love to see Neil deGrasse Tyson in a Dolph Lundgren role. That would be an honestly made effort at putting him in that role.
If he dies, he dies.
Yes, that would be amazing. Or Brian Cox or any one of those dudes from PBS. They're looking to become the next social phenom.
Yeah.
That's
But
what I'm
but
talking
but
about.
but that's where I then go again back to the economics, the whole thing. I think the economics is what drives it. I think I agree with you in part is that the real answer to any frankly, as Mark said, this stuff has been out for 2 weeks. It's far too soon for anybody to sit here and say, oh, well, this doesn't fit that or this doesn't do that. We've had, photographs for a short period of time. It's not enough time to do an in-depth review and provide research that proves X, Y, or Z. So I think you're right. I think the correct answer is to say we don't know. And frankly, the stuff shouldn't even be put out there at this point. Anybody who's saying it is simply trying to
Nah,
capitalize, as you say, and
Right.
they
that's
ultimately
the
will look
thing.
a fool.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the
And the
thing.
way it
But
works
you
in the
know,
practical sciences, like, oh, we've discovered this new thing for batteries or solar panels, or because I do follow a lot of the tech things where they're like, oh, this new, thing for called solar panels. We're like, oh, it's giving us better efficiency, or it's a different way to use them without using silicon or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Usually some university or some, think tank will be like, we've discovered a way to do this and it's more efficient and it's better and it's in the lab. Like when they make an announcement like that, they'll do a paper and that'll be published in a scientific journal or whatever. That's when the rest of the scientific community will be like, yeah, let's go ahead and we're going to take that theory and test it. And if we can reproduce that in, America and England and Australia and Beijing, okay, there might be something there. You know what I mean? Like nobody takes some one paper that comes out and says, oh my gosh, I've discovered this. And we're like, that's it. We cracked it. That's not how it works, right? Like everybody else will come along and then chew on it and go, can I replicate your results? No, then you're full of it. Yes. Hey, there might be something here.
Well, see, but that's the thing is that when you get to something as vast and as ancient and as difficult, impossible to actually discover as the birth of or creation of or beginnings of the origin of everything, right? When you have that, you can't peer review it. There's no way to do that because you can't go back in time and actually test it. There's no way to do that.
But that's not what peer review is.
Well, no, I'm saying it's immune to any scientific method. It's immune to any of it, all of it. The scientific method breaks down when you're talking about something of such magnitude. You cannot find out. You can't. So the mere fact that, like you said, Kelly, these things, not that they've come out. I don't mind the transparency. I don't mind that. I really don't. What I mind is everybody guarding their eggs and, automatically going into that defensive mode because they see now that their bailiwick is possibly on fire, and that they're going to lose that.
But that is human nature. We are never going to get away from that because you're a human first and a scientist second. And if you're the head of astrophysics at University of whatever, and you've been teaching this for your entire adult life, and here's some new data that means everything you've been teaching is possibly not right. Of like every human in the world is going to be like, oh man, no, what I've been teaching is right. Give them a couple weeks to come to terms with the changing worldview because that's what's going to happen. Like if and again, this is the difference between theoretical, like we're looking at pictures that go back in time, basically, and forming our basis, our theories on, looking through this telescope. That is different, like I said, than some of the practical sciences where I make a discovery, you guys can test it and see if it holds water. You know what I mean? This is everybody looking at the same pictures or same data and going, oh, well, we didn't expect this based on our theories. What do we do about that?
But look, I want to go back to something Sean said, and I'm gonna disagree with you mildly on the idea that you can't ever know the origin of a thing. And maybe you're narrowing it to the scope of the origin of the universe or something like that. But I think following a scientific method, following appropriate peer review of the work that you did is critical to that process. But I think you can actually get to the idea of what an origin of something was.
You can't, not scientifically. You can't. The whole basis of quantum theory is you can't prove anything. There's nothing you can prove. And that's a basic principle of quantum theory, is that you cannot empirically prove anything because each observer is different. The observation and the measuring tool is never going to be in the same place or where it needs to be to measure a thing empirically. It can't. So you'll never be. Well,
Yeah.
that's
Well, hold on.
science.
I want to jump
That's
on
what
Kelly's
it
side
says.
just to take the opportunity to disagree with Sean. What I would say is, what I would say in answer, like in all seriousness, though, in answer to that would be possibly you're right, Sean, with the tools we have at our disposal.
Possibly. What I'm saying is look it up. It's
With the
there.
tools at our disposal, you may be 100% correct. But as science advances, that may not always be the case.
Science can advance all at once, but people are what they are. We can only perceive things. Okay, people
Right.
aren't what they are. People are the X-Men. People are genetic mutations
Oh, how cool
that
would
are
that
going to
be?
change over time.
No, but Sean, that's a very self-limiting statement
Dude,
to say that
bring it
people
up
are
with-
what they are.
No,
Okay.
what I'm saying is bring it up with science. I'm telling you what science says. Science says you cannot know a thing empirically. You cannot. Time, they have no idea what it is because there's no bar that you can actually set as a medium for everyone to agree on to measure it from. You can't. You cannot know a thing. It's impossible. Look it up. I'm not saying it.
No, but
It's
I
not
think
me saying
there's
it.
a difference
Science
between
says this.
there's a difference between a bunch of scientists whether or not they can agree and whether or not you can know. Okay, there's a big leap there. Can we all agree? Probably not. Can somebody actually know? Yes.
Well, how would you know that they know?
Whether or not you agree is immaterial to the discovery of an origin of a thing.
But that's
So
the
the idea of a
scientific
peer
method.
review is not whether or not two people in the same room
No.
observe the same thing.
Kelly,
but
I
somebody
know.
recreate an experiment and get the same result. Okay.
Yes,
And
I know.
If you repeat it 100 times, then you have sort of a process that says, okay, the outcome is going to be X.
Kelly, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand what peer review is.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is quantum theory tells you that things are so random, so unpredictable, you cannot empirically prove a thing.
Okay, but if that's what quantum theory tells you and you accept that as fact, then it disproves itself because it can't obviously know the outcome of a thing.
I am not saying any of that. I'm telling you what science says. That's what I'm saying. By
Sure.
their own rule, I'm saying by science's own rule, you cannot know anything empirically.
Okay,
So
then
all
why are
quantum
these guys
physics-
going on onto the internet and talking about how this new discovery is only minor and it doesn't change the
that's what I'm
original
saying.
Big Bang theory?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, now we've come full circle. Now I'm mad at them too.
All I'm saying is a bit of humility. All I'm saying is a bit of humility. Like you said, Mark, there are practical applications, right? There's enough of stuff that you can say with a reasonable amount of certainty. If I do this, then this will follow, right? There's a reasonable amount of certainty that if I sit on a chair, I'm going to sit on the chair. However, in quantum mechanics, there is a chance that I will actually quantum tunnel through the chair into the center of the earth, but we know, because enough people have done it, that that's probably not going to happen. So we're reasonably sure that we can do that. That's your practical side, right? But have enough humility to say, in all honesty, we don't know. We don't know. Because when you come up against conundrums like this, because you will find every single time, we have found this from the flat earth thing, every single time we have expanded our horizon, looked a little further, we find out we were wrong. That what we thought was there was wrong. And then we say, well, aren't we wonderful? We figured out that everything was wrong and we changed everything. Isn't that great? Let's name it after one of us and build a monument.
Now we know everything and there's nothing new to discover. Those primitive rubes in the past, they didn't know everything that we know. We know all the things.
I would put forward the idea that things are knowable. That anybody who says it's completely unknowable doesn't know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, you can take that up.
I would also say this is that the idea of anybody talking about anything with any degree of certainty is a problem in as much as science has proven over and over again, humanity has proven over and over again that it does have the ability to evolve and its understanding of the world around it has an opportunity to evolve as well, such as Johannes Kepler's laws of planetary motion. That was something that was not widely accepted when it was first published. Right.
That is the history of science. Every new scientific discovery is met with this. I mean, it's almost a joke at this point. How many people were like excommunicated from the church because how dare you science? The church knows science, you don't, right? There's no way that the earth is not the center of the universe or the solar system or what have you. uh, and don't get me started on how many doctors have said you have a week to live, and 15 years later this person is still kicking around or whatever. Like, because medicine is a form of science, and there's a lot that we don't know in any of those.
It is, but the important thing in that analysis is to not let the outlier influence the overall abundance of a thing, right? So I mean, if you study 100 things and 95 of them go this one particular way, sure, we can look at the 5 and try to dig into why these 5 did something different. But if 95 of them did a predictable thing, then you have a basis for some understanding of how a thing works, right? We can modify things based on that, because there are a couple of laws out there as far as this happens scientifically. We know that scientifically X is supposed to happen, but there are a couple of outliers that do something different, but it doesn't disprove the law from existing as a law.
But it does mean that we don't understand why it works the way it does.
No, and some of them you actually
we don't have a complete understanding.
We don't have a complete understanding of any of them. The strong force, the weak force, gravity.
Yeah, I don't. Well, to be fair, I don't know any scientist that is literally like, we know everything. Like I'm sure there's somebody out there that thinks they know everything, but you know what I mean? Like, on the whole, most scientists are like, yeah, there's a lot we don't know and we're still learning. Otherwise,
but I think the problem in that is that your average Joe person doesn't know how to speak in the language of that world, right? That's something that the average person is not used to, and you're sort of raised with the idea that your doctor is supposed to make you healthy. They can give you pills to make everything work. That the scientists produce, a research paper here that says, hey, if you drink 6 cups of coffee a day, it improves your heart health. And then, a year later, somebody says, no, if you drink 6 cups of coffee a day, it increases your chance of cancer. It's just that type of thing, is that we expect from this thing, and we are demanding and putting money into this thing, saying you have to give us certainty, right? But if we went into science and actually let scientists actually run with this thing and explore the worlds as they're supposed to do it, as they want to do it, then we're not going to expect certainty. We're going to expect outcomes that simply just drive more information that eventually lead to proper conclusions. That's what I would say. So I think your frustration in part, Sean, is with the economics of the thing is driving somebody to say X, and X doesn't drive with what you've come to understand of the system. And so I think the problem is not so much the person who says, hey, this doesn't fit the model, or this isn't a big deal. I think the economics is forcing the person to say a thing so they can put their name in the paper in a way that doesn't really matter.
I don't know. Economics, you're right. Well, I said economics actually drives that, and social, the want for social attention.
Sure.
But I do blame the scientist as well, who dives into that wholeheartedly and says, this is my theory, this is my field, this is what I purport. And then as soon as stuff comes out that says, ooh, doesn't seem that so, then suddenly it's all about, oh, no, don't look at that. The cracked windshield, that's not a big deal. It's still a good car. We'll go ahead. What can we do to put you in this theory today? That's kind of what it comes across as. Instead of coming in there and saying, well, it's possibly this, it might be this. Don't know. Here's a thought. It could be this, that kind of thing. That's all I'm saying. There's no humility there, or very little. Let me say very little, because the ones as an example, the 2 I mentioned, deGrasse Tyson and Hassenfelder, are absolutely very, very humble on that. Roger Penrose, another one who's very humble on that and says, I don't know, here's my thoughts, And I think that they should be more of the model rather than the rock star, scientist who Brian Cox goes on tour.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Cox goes on tour to play auditoriums and that sort of thing, like he's a band. That doesn't breed the humility that I personally would think you would need in order to have a pursuit like the sciences. Do
you think there's any value in him doing that?
I'm sure if it could be done without becoming a victim of your own fame, sure. But as you said, I don't know how you separate the human from the endeavor. And so you have to try to guard against that sort of thing.
Right now, I don't know who this person is. Never heard of him, so I'm not speaking ill of this particular person. But I'll
speak ill of him.
I'm trying to answer Kelly's question. Right. The benefit of a public face going out and popularizing science, which I think is what I'm hearing, right, is A, that drives more interest in the sciences from the next generation of students, and that can also be a form of fundraising Like I don't
Yeah.
think that guy when he gets when he leaves stage and goes back home, puts on his white lab coat and jumps into and is doing like science, do the
No,
science
he's not.
montage. There's
No.
other people that are doing the science.
Yes.
He's the kind of the public face of, let's recruit people into the sciences.
That's right. That's right.
He's an interpreter.
Let's get some money in here,
Right.
and so that we could do more science, and so I think there's a benefit, but
I
I
do
also
too.
think you're right. When you're a public face of anything, science, entertainment, politics, doesn't really matter. Now you're right. The
Yeah.
humility doesn't necessarily follow that.
Yeah.
I'm with
But
you.
that's what I'm after, is that there is a value to him going out there and packing a stadium full of people, because maybe you get one, maybe you get 5 people. to
Maybe you
just
get that new
increase-
Einstein, who that
Right.
was, some 10-year-old kid. It was like,
You-
I want to do this.
Exactly. You increase somebody's understanding, whether or not they get the higher minded crap that you're talking about. But if they start to understand even the basic foundations of science, and we expand knowledge that way, I think there's a value add. And so I don't have a problem on that.
I have no problem with that. My issue is with the science has become more a pursuit of fame.
I think that's hard to say, man. I mean, I get,
not at
no,
all.
Sean, I get what
There
you're
are
saying.
some scientists who are
Exactly.
pursuing fame.
I-
Is not science
No.
itself is not like,
know-
let's put these people in front of the world.
Hawking actually hated many of his peers, and his peers hated him because they had competing theories. They wanted to be right, and they knew there was money involved. They knew, as Kelly was saying, the keynote thing and all that stuff. Sabina said there was one dude that a friend of hers was saying she was on the Metro, or the whatever they call it over there in Germany, and another physicist was on there and asked, "Where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going to go see Sabina." And he said, "Punch her in the mouth for me when you see her," because she had said something contrary to this guy's, theory.
Sure.
Those are not the paragons that you would be taught.
No,
the
but there are
paragon
also,
values to have as a scientist. What
but there are
I'm
also
saying,
probably exceptions to the rule.
no, I don't think they are. Scientists, think about NASA, Dave.
How is that different than people who
It was-
have? Hold on. How is that any different than people that have competing economic philosophies?
No, I'm
or
not
political
saying it is.
philosophies?
I'm
or what-
not saying
that's what I'm
it
saying.
is,
They're
Mark.
humans.
What I'm saying is, don't hold them up as being above all that, because they're not.
No one on this podcast, the three of us, have not.
No, I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about the world in general, the public in general.
Well, the public
it
in
with-
general is dumb.
Take it with a grain of salt is what I'm saying. That's what was so frustrating about this week, was that you have something that comes out that really rocks the foundations of a very widely held belief. Not 100%, because nothing is, right? But a widely held belief. And so to have this, which is not new information, there were some people who had theories that it's possible for this other stuff to happen.
Mhm.
But rather than quashing them until such time as suddenly their stuff shows up as, oh, well, I guess they were right, and then coming out and trying to either co-opt it for yourself or diminish it so that you have less of a threat
Let me
to
stop you
you.
right there. You are going to spend your entire life being frustrated, kicking against the pricks of human emotion. That's what it sounds like to me. Like a new thing has come out and changed our understanding. There will always be people clinging to the status quo, what they're invested in, what they've built their reputations, what they've built their careers.
I'm not sure you understand what I'm doing.
That is going to happen. I'm stepping it back. I'm like, cool, we've discovered something new. Noise, left and right, or this theory, that theory. Cool. Let them fight it out for a couple of weeks. Then there's going to be the investigation phase where we're like, oh, well, what does this actually mean? Do we have all the, none of that is going to happen in 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't personally, I'm not upset. Like, this new thing came out and this is a big deal. And some people are going to like, no, it's not. And some people are like, yes, our fundamental understanding of everything has changed. I don't have an opinion. I'm not a scientist, and I'm definitely not literate enough in the sciences to really grasp what's at play here. I'm going to let these guys fight it out and figure out what's going on.
Well, thank you enough for your honesty, and I will disregard everything you said then.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure you understand.
And on that note,
I'm not sure you understand what my point was. My point was, this was an opportunity because these things come across or come along not quite so publicly.
Yeah.
Very few times, right? Or not enough to be able to really make a point of it. I wanted to use this opportunity to make a point of it. You know, this is what I'm talking about. This is they should teach this. They should take moments like this and actually teach this, put this out there. They do teach
it in the abstract. I remember learning about the scientific method, and you're like, here's this theory, and new information comes along, and we go, oh, well, now we have new information. We need to adjust our theory. That's the point where we're in. But somebody who's invested in the old theory is fighting it because of ego, because of prestige, because they've spent their whole life doing it one way, you know what I mean? Or thinking that this was the way. Like I'm not going to throw every scientist who's gone on Twitter in the last 2 weeks to defend what they've spent their life believing.
I am, because in the beginning, they shouldn't have put it up there as a given. They should go into it with possible.
And let's hope they learn that
thing.
Lesson in humility when all this shakes out.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's what I want to come across. Use this as an opportunity for humility. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. There's been a whole lot of the sciences settled over the last year or so.
So what have we concluded here? The general population is stupid. It doesn't understand science.
Do that
all of humanity is stupid. Don't trust them. Don't trust humanity.
What's that line from Men in Black where it's like a person is smart and intelligent, but people are dumb, crazy animals and whatnot when you get the group together.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Mark, I found your.
Oh, yay! Nice.
So, yes. So there you are.
That is a training pistol that I picked up at the SHOT Show a few years ago. That I let Sean use for when he was teaching training classes and whatnot. And so, what's funny is I've been packing for the show we're doing next week, and I retrieved all my firearms from Sean's house, except I think there's one in your safe. Got them here, put them away, and I was like, I'm missing some pistols. Where are those? So I went to my storage unit yesterday to get some stuff for the t-shirt business, and I'm handing boxes out. I'm like, oh, let's take these. And there was a little Pelican case, and I was like, hey, open that and see what's in it. My wife opened it. She's like, oh, it's full of pistols. I was like, that's where they went. So I found all my pistols. It's always nice to have a Pelican case full of unexpected pistols.
I'm without words.
And he just gave a talk on science and how scientists should act. And
I don't see how one relates to the other.
Perfect example of humanity.
Look, they were locked up.
No, that you don't see how one relates to the other.
No, I don't see how one relates to it. It wasn't new information that was discovered. I'm like, I knew I owned pistols. I just wasn't sure where they were because I moved a bunch of times.
Yes. The point is that it had a happy ending. There you are. It did
have a happy ending.
It had a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
That's not part of the scientific method.
No, it
should be, though.
It should be. It should be. You should get something that makes everybody happy. You discovered a thing. Yay. And
everything
an
has
ice cream
to
party
end
or something.
Exactly. Everything has to end with everybody winning.
I like the kitten theory for the beginning of the universe. I like the idea of looking through the most powerful observational tool we will ever make. Kelly's thing about humanity evolving, getting better, right? That we get to a point 1 million years down the road, we're still around, we survived, we've achieved this level of technology, got the most powerful thing we can find to look back in time. We get to the source, the very origin, and there's a box of kittens.
Oh.
Left by a bunch of 13-year-old babysitters.
That would be a happy ending. They're so cute.
That would be, wouldn't it? That would be awesome. Mm-hmm. God there with his box of kittens.
Looks like Mr. Rogers. Come on in.
Oh, man. Anyway, thank you for sitting through that. I appreciate you letting me vent. Thank you.
So much venting.
So, all right.
It took a while.
Yeah. All right. So.
All right. Good episode. See you guys.
On that note.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.